Over the past couple of years, Jagex have introduced multiple group bosses, like Nex or Huey, but the first one you'll encounter along your journey is probably the Royal Titans. Now, ever since the dawn of group bossing, there have been questions. Is it better to do this boss solo? Is it better to do it in duos? If I want both the prayers and the entire staff, how many kills do I have to do on average if I want to do it solo? And how many kills do I have to do with a teammate? All these questions are going to be answered today. So let's start with the basics. Every time you defeat both Royal Titans, you can loot either one of them, but only one, and you have an option of 3 separate loot options. One is just a regular loot, one is the take pages option, and one is forfeiting your loot to gamble for the pet, giving you a double chance at the pet. Now, for the sake of this video, we are just gonna be looking at the standard loot option, since this is the only one that will get you some actual uniques. First, let's focus on the most important item, the Deadeye Prayer Scroll dropped by Eldrick the Ice King. The Deadeye Prayer Scroll replaces Eagle Eye in your prayer book with the Deadeye Prayer, which is an even stronger ranged prayer. For Ironman, this prayer scroll is almost unmissable, since you will use it into Chambers of Jagex and Corrupted Gauntlet if you haven't gotten Rigor yet. So let's say we go into the Royal Titans and our only goal is to get this prayer unlock, right? How long is that gonna take? Well, that depends if you do it solo or duo. See, the Royal Titans drop rates are based on a damage contribution system, which means that if you do 100% of the damage, then the drop will be equal to the drop rate, which is 1 in 75 for all these uniques. But if you're doing a duo and you both do 50% of the damage, well, then the drop rate for you turns into a 1 in 150, and it's also 1 in 150 for the other player. And if you do even less damage than that, then the other player has a slight advantage in odds of getting the drop. But let's say you're going in solo. Well, we know that for solo KCs, the drop rate of the prayer scroll is 1 in 75. And since we're not interested in anything else, so not in the staff and not in the mage prayer at this particular time, we are just gonna be looting the ice giant. So let's quickly have a look of the graph that shows you what the probability is of you getting this prayer scroll by a certain KC. Now, you should know that for an item with a drop rate of 1 in 75, the average amount of kills you need to do in order to get that item is 75. It is equal to the denominator of the drop rate. However, that does not necessarily correspond with the 50% chance point of getting the item. So if we look at the graph here, we see that the 50% chance point is actually around 52 kills. And we can calculate this through a formula that has been shown many times on this channel and is the primary anchor of my 50/50 series, and that is this formula. And here in this formula for X, you can fill in the percentage probability that you want to have by which you get the drop. So for us, that's going to be 50% or 0.5. And for D, you just fill in the drop rate, which in our case is 75. And then we get 52. But do note that we can change this X to any percentile that we want. So say you want to calculate when do I have a 99% chance at getting this particular drop. Well, we just change the X to 0.99, redo the calculation, and you get 343. But now, how does this change when you add in a partner? You see, if you're playing with 2 people, the cumulative probability of you getting the drop needs to add up to this 1 in 75. So that means that if you both do an equal share of the damage, that you will have a 1 in 150 chance to get the drop, and your partner will have a 1 in 150 chance to get the drop. Because if you add those probabilities together, you get the original 1 in 75. So let's assume that you do 50% of the damage and that your partner does 50% of the damage. Then we can take this formula and just change the drop rate to 150, and everything else can remain the same. Then our 50% chance point all of a sudden is going to be 104 kills, which, yes, is just twice as high as the 1 in 75 drop rate, because there the 50% chance point laid at 52 kills. So if we lay these graphs over each other, we see the following. We see that for every single point, the duo method takes twice as many kills as the solo method. So we saw it already for 50%, but let's have a look at 90%. For the solo line, you see that 90% chance equates to approximately 173 kills, and for a duo, this 90% chance comes at 345, which again is approximately double the amount of solo kills. So if you're doing equal damage, as soon as you bring a partner in, expect to do twice as many kills. It's that simple. But this was just for the prayer scroll. Now, what do you say if we want to have the staff, the twin flame staff? Now again, let's approach it solo first. Both halves of the twin flame staff have a drop rate of 1 in 75, just like the ranged prayer, which means that individually we can treat them exactly the same. What does that mean? Well, that means that we can keep this orange line here. It's the same graph to get one half of the staff. The only problem is we need to get two. And now we're gonna assume that once you complete one half of the staff, you immediately switch over to the other giant and start looting them. And then what does that process look like? Well, you might say, well, if I have a 50% chance at 52 kills to get the fire element of the staff and a 50% chance at 52 kills to get the ice element staff, then I can just add them together and I have a 50% chance of completing the twin flame staff at 104 kills. But this is not how it works. But why not? Well, let's take a step back. Let's say we're tossing a coin. When I toss a coin, I have a 50% chance of hitting heads. And in our case, heads is getting one piece of the twin flame staff, and tossing a coin is killing the royal titans 52 times. Now, if I flip two coins, the odds of it coming up as heads twice is not 50%, right? It is 25%. So we can't just simply add these odds together because there's something different going on. And that something different is the binomial distribution. See, anytime you need to get multiple drops from a source, you are very likely entering binomial distribution territory. And what the binomial distribution describes is I need X amount of successes from N amount of trials. And in our case, it's I need 2 drops of 1 in 75 from 104 kills. And if we plug that into any binomial calculator that you can find online, we see that the odds of completing at 104 kills are actually just 40% and not 50. So when do you have a 50% chance? Well, we can use the binomial calculator for that as well. And if we use the binomial calculator for every point, every kill, then we can graph the probabilities on this line right here. And we see that the 50% chance point lies at 126 kills. And once again, we see that if you add in a partner, then all the points on the line double. So your 50% chance point is not at 126, but it is now at 252. And for a 90% chance, you have a 90% chance of solo completing the twin flame staff at 291, but in duo that is 583. So this will give us an answer to the question, is it better to do Royal Titan solo or duo? And it's as simple as if you can kill the Royal Titans more than twice as fast with a partner, then you should do it with a partner. But if you cannot do it twice as fast, you should do it solo, assuming that you and your partner both do an equal damage share. But there's one more thing I want to talk about. The twin flame staff drops in 2 halves of 1 in 75. But what if the twin flame staff dropped in its entirety at a drop rate of 1 in 150? Because this feels like something we've seen at many other places. The twin flame staff is really just a form of bad luck mitigation disguised as something else. So let's put 2 graphs on top of each other that show the actual chance of completing the twin flame staff at a certain KC and the hypothetical scenario where the twin flame staff is just a straight up 1 in 150 drop. And how do they compare? As we often see with bad luck mitigation, you see that on the left side, at lower KCs, you would have a far greater chance of getting the twin flame staff early if it was just a 1 in 150 drop. But on the right side of the graph, you see that it is very hard to go super dry in the case of it being 2 1 in 75 drops compared to the 1 in 150 drop. And this results in the average amount amount of kills you need to do being approximately the same, but creating a certain sense of dry protection or bad luck mitigation for you to get the staff. Personally, I think this is one of the smartest designed drop tables from Jagex, because it's still possible to get really lucky on the prayer scrolls, because you don't need 2 drops from them to complete that, you only need the 1, but you have the bad luck mitigation for the twin flame staff, so you're probably not killing the royal titans for 1000 KC. But do let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Very curious to hear what you think. Thank you so much for watching. If you like statistics like this, do check out my 50/50 Ironman series, where I can only kill a mob until I have a 50% chance at getting that mob's rarest item. And make sure to like and subscribe and comment and do all the good stuff, and then I'll see you for the next one.